Welcome to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
I'm Shannon Lawrence.
And I'm MB Partlow.
Quick content warning before we get started. This podcast may contain language and disturbing content, so enter at your own risk.
Hello. Hello.
No.
The last time I shouted hello, we were at conference.
Wow. Which will be
who the hell
the next time you hear from us because we're doing this out of order.
We are, because we can. We're time lords. We're bending time.
Are we?
Hey, let me have it.
I feel like I'm bending time half the time just because I have way too many things I'm doing right now.
I just feel like I'm bending my brain.
I just... work drama and all that stuff. Jeff said to me yesterday, he was like, "You have podcasts tomorrow?" Yes. He was like, "How many more things can you shove in before you go to the UK?" So you just like your schedule like that? No, but it was necessary.
Sometimes that's just the way it works out.
Yeah. So
I had to, oh my God, I will be writing a sternly worded letter. I bought a new car, not new to me car. And it was a very painful process. And then when I finally got the car, fuck. That's all I can say is fuck. Had a quarter of a tank of gas in it, and it needs windshield washer fluid.
wow, they're supposed to top all that shit up.
Yes, they are, fuckers. And they had it extra days because it had to be deodorized because it had a wet dog smell. And I said, I don't want a car with a wet dog smell. No problem.
Yeah, they have like magical little machines you can put in there. Because when we bought one of ours used, now my brother was our salesperson back then. He was doing that. Now he's a mechanic. But he brought it down from the dealership in Denver to create our car down here because he was pissed. But he was always like mega honest. So he was never going to be a slimy salesman. Yes. But I don't even remember what it was, like cigarette smell and dog smell. And I was... ugh. So... And we had to like leave that in there for a while, whatever those machines were.
Well, they had a team come in and treat it.
Yeah.
It smelled lemony fresh.
After that.
So when I picked the car up, I'm sitting in the car and Joe is standing there and the salesman is standing there and he reaches over and he shakes Joe's hand. And he holds out his hand to me and I look at his hand and I look him in the eye and I said, "No." And he goes, "I'm sorry, what?" I said, "I don't want to shake your hand." And he goes, "Okay." And I said, "This has been a day. This has been a day from hell. This has sucked. This entire day has sucked." And the dealership, it feels like the dealership did everything they possibly could to make it more painful. And he went, "Are you mad at me?" I said, "Yes, Matt, I am mad at you." He goes, "Well, would you mind telling me why?" I said, "I would be delighted to tell you why." And I didn't cuss him out. I was very straightforward, but I said, for God's sake, when people ask you a question, give them a real answer. Everything was, this will take 10 minutes, and we'd sit there for an hour.
Right.
And I was like, that doesn't fly with me. I have a life and a low tolerance for boredom.
Right.
So when we were, because we had to go to the dealership twice. So the first day, we'd been there all day. And I looked at Joe and I went, "I'm done." And Joe goes, "Oh, shit." And the sales clerk, sales guy, who you figured out his name is Matt, goes,
we know Matt now.
He goes, "Yes, I know more about Matt than I need to." But he was like, "I really, really appreciate your patience with this process." And I looked at him and I said, "You do not understand anything, Matt." I said, "I do not have much patience. As a matter of fact, I am world famous for having very little patience." And I said, "I have used up the entire month of May's worth of patience here this afternoon in this dealership. I got no more." And just like, so Joe pulls out because he had recently had some surgery. He goes, I had surgery recently and I need to go home. I can't sit here any longer. And I was just like, "Thank you for throwing yourself on that bomb I lit and threw it." I couldn't take it. And it did. I just snapped and I was like, "No, there's no going back. I can't do it. I got to get out of here. I'm going to start throwing things."
Yeah, long ago, we decided Shannon doesn't go car shopping with the actual salespeople anymore. And I will say, if they come up to me when I'm there, because I'll go look at stuff, but if they come, I've always shut down if a salesperson comes out. I don't like being sold to. It feels like being handled. I've never been good at being handled.
I've seen that.
So
I can testify.
Yeah. So, and Jeff is easygoing and he knows cars. I mean,
yes.
He's done an entire engine replacement at this point, but he always had to fix his own cars and stuff when he was a kid. So it's just, if they swoop in though, and I'm like, I just want to be able to look at stuff, and they actually
listen,
pay attention to that, then I will go to them and get their card and say, if we come back, we will make sure you get the sale. Because if you are an actual human being who reads other human beings, which salespeople should be able to, and knows when to back off being aggressive or you're going to lose a sale or whatever, then I want to make sure that you get a kickback or whatever.
And I had done all my research. I knew what car I wanted. I knew what years were acceptable to me. And I was just waiting, and I'm not ashamed to say it, I was waiting for it to come in a color I liked. So when it appeared, I went, that one.
There it is.
I'm coming and drive that one. It's pretty. It's a pretty. It's bright blue. It's screaming. I think the name of the color is actually flame blue, which makes no sense.
I mean there's blue.
Yes,
but it's not that color.
No.
Because that's like a deeper blue. Whatever. Technicalities. We don't need to go there.
Yeah, no. And I don't know about you, I'd be making it up.
Like, well, it is exactly this shade. No. Luckily, color is not a thing I obsess about, that I need to do that.
Although I will say, for our listening audience, my car matches Shannon's hair right now. It's not matchy-matchy, but it goes.
It goes. It would be... Man, the amount in public people feel the need to point out if I'm wearing blue, which, yes, blue is one of the few colors I'm comfortable in, like a dark blue. Black, dark blue, purple. Dark purple. But that to a lesser degree, even though I love that color. So, those are my colors. And red. I can do a red.
You can.
So, but if you, for fuck's sake, if you go out in public and you have blue hair and you're wearing blue, in any way, shape, form, somebody has to point it out to you. And they have to ask you if that's your favorite color. And the same thing when my hair was purple. And I'm always like, yes. I love this color so much that you can't see, but the rest of my body is dyed this color. Does that satisfy your curiosity? Like, are we good? Cool. I would like to order now.
I would like to place my order now, please. So, this morning I was doing a little research, a little reading, because there's a new, it won't be new by the time this comes out, but there's a new, I think it's on Netflix, serial killer documentary about a couple in England.
I think
in London. It's grotesque. And I thought, well, I looked at it and I thought, have we covered them? And I still don't know. I think their last name is West. I just didn't.
Oh, yeah. Was it Rosemary and Fred?
Yes.
I don't remember if we covered them. I'm familiar with them. I might have covered them. Were they the oldest one? Didn't I do a youngest and an oldest together? I don't know.
They wouldn't have been the youngest or the oldest killers.
Yeah.
But oh my God. So I saw something on probably Instagram or Facebook Reels or something. And people were saying, are Americans aware of this? Because this made
we are.
Yeah, we are. Because it made such a big impact when it happened in London. And so I thought, this sounds really familiar. So I looked it up and I start reading the Wikipedia article about it. I kept going, just making these awful noises. Because it just kept getting worse.
Yeah, they were terrible.
They were both on their own horrible. And together, they were worse. Mm-hmm. Oh, my God. It was just, and I kept going, why? No.
Yeah. Like I remember their names, right? So it stuck out. Because a lot of them, I'm like, that one that did the thing.
Yeah.
You know that one? Okay,
yeah,
great.
over in the place.
Yeah, that one.
Over yonder.
But nope, I remember the Wests. They're distinctive.
Well, yes. And they killed so many people. So many women. I don't think they killed any men.
Lame.
Right?
I think if you're going to be a duo that you should diversify.
Oh, they were diverse. The one thing I didn't get to was when the bodies were finally found. I think everybody, or almost every body, was missing phalanges, was missing finger bones. Mm-hmm. And as far as I can tell, I don't know where they went. They feel like they were kept as trophies.
Okay. Because I was going to say, how fresh are they? Because those are the things that wander away when the animals come.
Well, they were all buried in their backyard.
Okay, that's right.
It wasn't a look. And some were cemented over. Like he built a bathroom or something over. Yeah.
We have to extend the house again. Okay.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I don't know. We'll have to look and see if it was done.
I don't want to talk about that.
I was going to say, are you actually going to cover them?
No, I am not. You are free to. After reading that this morning, I was like, I need to bleach my brain. I need to Lysol my brain. So, what were you going to say about Friends?
No, it's about Psych, because I started rewatching Psych again, and I watched the episode with Tim Curry in it. Which is where he's basically Simon Cowell and he's the judge on a show and somebody's trying to kill him. And I'm like, he's a dick. Who wouldn't try to kill him? I'm surprised nobody tried to kill Simon Cowell. But anyway, there's one scene where Sean's trying to protect him or whatever, and he takes something and he's like, give it back. And he talks back to him in his voice and accent, no.
I started rewatching that when Thing One was home, and she's coming home for Memorial Day, so perhaps we will watch more.
Watch some? Yeah, I had to just running all yesterday. Wrote my script, clocked into my second job, and worked that until I went to bed while listening to D&D happening in the other room. Who knew that it was such an animated game?
Not me.
My husband can sleep through anything. That's all I have to say. That's insane. Luckily. And I'm just always up. Yeah. I went upstairs to get something at like midnight and my son was like, good night. And I was like, I'm not going to bed. What if I got to bed at midnight? Then everybody thought that was hysterical. Well, so he was just being a smartass. But
because I know when I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, if I feel like I need to chat with someone, I can message you.
I'm hoping going to England, I can reset my clock to a better clock.
Oh, that would be delightful.
Wouldn't it? I've tried that, though, on multiple trips. Mexico was only a couple hours difference, I think, so that didn't do it. But this is significant, so if I can come back and get on, like, a normal schedule, that would be lovely. Then I could work all sorts of jobs that I can't work right now.
Could you cram more into your time?
Oh, God. Boo. So once upon a time, I start out so happy at like a new job.
We all do.
And then it all burns to the ground.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yay. Oh, shame.
As a friend of mine says, I had a little mentee bee. It's like, okay.
What?
Instead of saying I had a mental
a mentee bee.
A mentee bee. Not minty. I'm slurring. I swear I haven't been drinking.
We had to pause so Amy could tell my husband that she got a new car.
Yes.
And show it to him.
Kind of say, wee!
Yeah, he's got one of our vehicles he's had to keep taking in and they keep not fixing the actual problem. And then he went to pick it up Friday because we have a rental car. Mm-hmm. Well, they're giving us the car, but yeah. And he showed up to get it at the time he was supposed to get it, and all of the management had gone home and he early on because it was Friday, and so he couldn't get it. And he was pissed.
Oh, that would get some. I would be furious.
All right. Go ahead.
Do you want me to begin? Because I'm going to ramble. It's going to take me a while to get to the point. And people who are listening are going, and this is different how? It is not, but it's a targeted ramble. Let's go with that. Anyway, I recently had the occasion to rewatch the 1944 movie Arsenic and Old Lace. And I know more about Arsenic and Old Lace now than because I looked online. I looked up some facts about the show, about the movie. It is based on a stage play, and you can kind of tell.
Yeah, there's a lot. I love it when you're watching it, you can tell that it was first paced out as like a play.
Yes, because it all takes place in this one room, except there's obviously some stuff they've added in outside. But Cary Grant is absolutely marvelous in it. He is wonderful. And there's a really memorable moment when I can't remember what the action is or what is said, and he stops and he looks directly into the camera, breaking the fourth wall. And that fascinated me because I'm like, we tend to think of that as a modern thing, but
basically,
it's not.
Ferris Bueller Ford.
Yes. And especially like Deadpool.
Yeah. I watched a random, what was it called? You Me Madness. It was on Prime. And it's a horror comedy, basically. There's very little horror, but there is a lot of gore. So that counts for a lot of people, I guess. But it goes way off the deep end in terms of the comedy stuff, but multiple characters breaking the fourth wall. And then yelling at each other about breaking the fourth wall.
What's it called?
You Me Madness, I think.
You, comma, me?
I don't even know if there's a comma.
Oh, I'm writing this down. You, me, because this
But
sounds...
yeah, it was on Prime, and it's pretty amusing. I told the spouse to watch it. He grabbed a pencil.
that doesn't...
It's like that pause, like, what the fuck?
I think I had to pay to watch Arsenic and Old Lace. Like $2.99. It's not on any of the... And I have Prime, I have Netflix, I have Hulu. I feel like it should be on one of those.
It's right. I keep feeling we were trying to watch. Oh no! See, I always go to Stand Against versus Evil, but it's Tucker and Dale. There we go. Like I frequently can't remember versus whatever, and it wasn't anywhere. And I was like, how do we not have this?
Stand versus Evil. You can only get the first episode of.
Yeah,
which pissed me off. There was something else I wanted to watch, and
there's a new show with the Madman guy that I wanted to watch, and it's something like they have stuff from so many different actual, like it's Apple Plus or this or that.
I can't get Apple stuff unless it's old.
We just don't want to pay for any more streaming services.
Exactly. I can watch the first episode of anything, and then it will say you have to watch the rest on your Apple device, and I don't own any Apple devices.
Well, we don't have an Apple device for our TVs.
But I'm like, and I'm not going to watch it on my phone because then I just end up squinting because it's too small. I know there are a lot of people who watch movies on their phone. Kudos. I can't do it.
No.
I cannot do it. So anyway, back to Arsenic and Old Lace. But it was so funny to me because a lot of times, like you were saying, the over the top, like when Deadpool breaks the fourth wall, he like kicks it down and stomps on it. Whereas with Cary Grant, it was like a look and an arched eyebrow. It was subtle and so beautifully done. He was he was very good in it. But I will say it was hard for it to hold my attention. I don't want to say anything bad because it's like a beloved movie and a beloved play. It's still staged a lot.
But things were paced differently. Now everything has to be like faster or you're not going to watch it. I cannot stand a Wes Anderson movie. And yet they look like they're going to be great. They have people in them that I know are great comedic, and I cannot every time, neither my husband nor I can. We will start it and then we'll be like, and we'll change it to something different. We cannot make it through a Wes Anderson movie. The pacing is not what we're accustomed to anymore. Yep. But it's not like we didn't grow up on the slower paced stuff.
But when you watch one of my favorite movies, Auntie Mame.
Yeah.
But that's quick.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot going on. And she, the Thin Man with Nick and Nora Charles, the snappy back and forth.
Does it make you wonder, though, if so I tried to watch, what is it called? It's something Diamonds, and it's Adam Sandler. And it's this really, neurotic, insanely paced, frenetic kind of movie. Oh. And, I cannot. It totally sensory overstimmed me, and I could not. I had to duck out. Jeff had to watch it by himself because I couldn't. And it's not that it was a bad movie, but it was just something about the pace and the franticness of it that freaked me out. Now, possibly also I was in a bad anxiety place at the time. I don't know, but it's happened. But it makes me wonder if you were accustomed to the slower films, if you watch something like Anti-Mame or whatever back then,
If it
would that have been overwhelming to people?
Huh. I don't know.
I don't know either.
Someone should study that and get back to us.
Yes, I need other people to do all this study work because I do not have the time to fall down rabbit holes like this.
No, nor do I. So, I'm going to give you a brief overview of the plot of the movie. In case anyone is unfamiliar. I can't imagine anyone is unfamiliar with Arsenic and Old Lace. And I know I have to have watched it before, but there were parts I was like, wait, what? So, Cary Grant's character is Mortimer Brewster. And the movie opens with him trying to very quietly, very secretly marry his girlfriend at City Hall. And he's trying to keep it a secret because I'm like, who cares? But he's a theater critic. And he's famous for publishing 3 books. One is The Bachelor's Bible. The second is Marriage, a Fraud and a Failure. And the third is Mind Over Matrimony. So he's like this famous, infamous bachelor who wants nothing to do with love and marriage. And here he is trying to marry the daughter of some kind of pastor who has moved in next door to him and his aunts. And
there would be a problem. It's just the whole entire platform just gone.
Yes. So he goes back to the family home where the 2 dotty old aunts live and care for his younger brother. So the younger brother thinks he is Theodore Roosevelt. So every time this actor goes up the stairs, at the bottom of the stairs, he extends his arm and yells, "Charge!" at the top of his lungs and charges up the stairs like he's charging up San Juan Hill.
Okay.
And all I could think was, that guy had to have been exhausted at the end of the play because every time it is full tilt boogie. He's got his arm out and he screams charge at the top of his lungs and just bolts up the stairs. And he's not a little guy. He's not lithe. He doesn't look like a runner. Maybe he is. I don't know. But anyway, I thought, and anybody who stages that, I'm like, do they warn the person? By the way, you're going to have to run up these stairs 147 times over the course of the...
Well, it's like Noises Off. How exhausting do you think that play is to do?
Oh, yes.
Because it's just...
Yeah.
It's just insane. Yes. I love it. I introduced it to Jeff, and it starts out kind of slow.
God, I haven't watched that
what
forever.
Is this? And then you hit the part where they're like in the play.
Yes.
And everything is going wrong, and it's just batshit. And he was like, oh, I see now. And I was like, you just got to hang in there.
Just got to give it enough time. He has come home to tell them about his marriage and pack his bag to go on the honeymoon. But he's looking for something, and he opens up the window seat. There's this big window seat, and he opens up the chest, the built into it, and there's a dead body in it.
No.
So he's freaked out. And it's a bloodless, you don't see anything. But he thinks his brother has gone completely insane and killed someone. So he's trying to protect his aunts from knowing that there's a dead body and his new bride from knowing there's a body and the police who are friends with his aunts from knowing. So he's trying to keep a secret that there's a dead body in the window seat. However, the aunts put the body there because they've taken to killing lonely old men. And it happened, this guy came and because they have a little sign out, room for rent or room to let. And if the guy comes in and he's lonely and tired and has no family, they do him a favor from their point of view and put him out of his misery by giving him poisoned elderberry wine that they make.
Which is that was really common for a while. It's like a family or a woman that would have like this inn or whatever, especially like here in the West.
Boarding house, yeah.
Yep. And boop, they're just gone. I wrote a story about it.
My great-grandparents had a boarding house. That's where my grandmother...
Did they kill people?
That's where my grandmother met my grandfather. He lived in the boarding house.
Are you sure?
That they didn't kill people? I am not. My family does occasionally, constantly surprise me. So.
We have criminals in our background, perhaps.
We have bootleggers and maybe some horse thieves. I don't think we have murderers, but who am I to say? So, the 2 aunts. So here's what cracked me up. They're both these, and they're probably the age I am now, realistically. I'm not, But the one, okay, do you remember the character? Think about Looney Tunes and Granny who owns Tweety Bird.
Mm-hmm.
one of the characters walks just like Granny, that little bouncy.
Yeah.
And she's just like, it's like she's on a spring, like she's a bobblehead. She's just bouncing as she walks, but it's all compact. It's not, nothing is
jiggling.
Nothing is jiggling.
There's no jiggling. That would be inappropriate.
It is corseted or whatever.
Bustled and corseted.
But she just bounces as she walks. And I just found that so amusing. I giggled every time she walked because it was so cute. So anyway, mayhem. There's an evil older brother who comes home, who's a criminal, and an unscrupulous doctor who comes with him. There are clueless police officers, a disgruntled taxi driver, and so poor Mortimer is trying to hide the dead body, but frickin' everybody is trying to get Mortimer to look at their screenplay because he's a theater critic. So I'm just going to give you all a spoiler alert. This came out in 1944, so it's not that much of a spoiler. There's a happy ending. So why am I babbling on and on about Arsenic and Old Lace? Because Joseph Kesselring wrote the play on which the movie was based. He was inspired by boarding house owner and serial poisoner Amy Archer Gilligan. And he even got to look at the court documents from the case. He got the actual court documents and talked to, I believe, the prosecutor. The prosecutor attended the opening night of the play and did not like it. But it's because of the story that he was involved in. It's nothing like. It really isn't. It's this woman poisoning people, but they weren't sweet. She was not sweet. So, Amy E. Duggan was born on Halloween in Connecticut in 1873. Quick flashback. Postcards were invented. P.T. Barnum's circus debuted in New York, and the Women's Temperance Union was born. All this happened in 1873. Amy was the 8th of 10 children, and at the age of 24, she married James Archer and gave birth to a daughter, Mary, in December of that year. In 1901, Amy and James became caretakers for a man named John Seymour, who was an elderly widower in Newington, Connecticut. This all takes place in Connecticut. I'm going to say all these towns. They don't matter. They matter to them. They aren't germane to the story. They moved into his home to take care of him. And that seems on the up and up. Everything was copacetic. After he died in 1904, which was 3 years later, his family converted the home to a boarding house for the elderly. And the Archers remained to run the house, named Sister Amy's Nursing Home for the Elderly. So you have to understand, at this point in history, there weren't any nursing homes. There wasn't anything, there was no system to take place of older members of society if they didn't have family who would take them in. So this would make the Archers pioneers in the field of elder care.
Great.
Yeah. They advertised in local papers and through postcards, because they could now. Boarders would pay a fee of $7 to $25 per week, or they could opt for a $1,000 life care plan. And there was little, if any, regulatory oversight. Nobody was coming in to see how they treated people. So in 1907, the Seymour family decided they wanted to sell the house. So the Archers moved to Windsor, Connecticut, where they opened their own place, the Archer Home for the Elderly and Infirm. And one of the things noted about Amy was that she was very active in her local church community. It was St. Gabriel's Church. She donated whenever she could. They were regular churchgoers. So James Archer, her husband, died in 1910, and his cause of death was listed as Bright's disease, which I had to look up because I'd never heard of it. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a generic term for kidney disease. Huh. I'm like, why could they not just say kidney? I don't know. The insurance policy that Amy had taken out on him allowed her to continue to operate the Archer home. Yes, the Archer home. And she did spend considerable time and energy immediately following his death wrangling with a local assessor over back taxes that were owed. She wrote very passionate letters about how she was a single mother trying to support her daughter. Which she was. She was a single woman with a daughter. But in 1913, she married Michael W. Gilligan, a wealthy man and an investor who had 4 adult sons. There is some evidence that Amy lied on her marriage license, making herself younger than she really was. 3 months later, 56-year-old Gilligan was dead of valvular heart disease and an acute bilious attack. When that's home with its feet up, it is known as really severe indigestion.
Oh.
If you're bilious, you have indigestion.
I was thinking like liver related.
Right? Bile, bilious, one would think. Fortunately for Amy, her husband had time to draw up a will, leaving her everything. Shutting his 4 sons out completely, leaving everything to her. So in a 10-year span between 1907 and 1917, there were 60 deaths reported at the Archer home. And I would like to point out, because this is where my brain went, this was before the infamous influenza pandemic, which you would think would naturally take the elderly and the infirm first. But this was a year before that happened. That was 1918 and killed 50 million people around the world. Mm-hmm. Only 12 people died between 1907 and 1910, but between 1911 and 1916, 48 residents of the home died. One of them was a man named Franklin R. Andrews, who was healthy enough. I mean, he wasn't a severely vigorous person, but he did odd jobs. I mean, he did the gardening, mm-hmm. He ran errands, and he was gardening that morning, dead that night. And the cause of death was listed as a gastric ulcer. However, Andrew had siblings, and they had some of his letters in which he complained about Amy constantly asking him for money. And a pattern was noticed, finally, of residents dying not long after giving Amy money. Andrew's sister, Nellie Pierce, went to the local DA with her suspicions. He ignored her. He was like, patted her on the head. What do you know? So she did what people still do. She went to the press. Nice. Instead of screaming on Facebook. She went to the press. On May 9th, 1916, the Hartford Courant published the first article in their Murder Factory series. It took a few more months, but finally the police began to investigate. The death rates at the Archer home were compared to those of another local home for the infirm. The rates were similar. It was almost exactly the same number of deaths, but the other home had 7 times as many people, had 7 times as many patients, so something was very off. Ironically, it was an obituary writer at the paper, Carlin Gosley, who really spurred the investigation. He noticed the high volume of work he was getting from the Archer home. I mean, why do people think nobody's going to notice?
Right.
He was also the first one who started checking with local drugstores and discovering how much arsenic Amy had been purchasing. The cause of death at the Archer the Archer home was almost always stomach pathologies and sudden death. So,
like, you don't even vary that shit.
Yeah. And other poisoners we've talked about, it hasn't all been people living in one spot. It's been like an in-law over here, a troublesome person over here, somebody who threatened them over there.
And years apart, typically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's like they get the insurance money, they live on it for a while, then they start looking for someone new to ensnare and poison. So the bodies of Andrews, the handyman, the second husband Gilligan, and 3 other boarders were exhumed and examined. All had died of poisoning, either arsenic or strychnine. Local merchants corroborated that Amy had purchased large quantities of arsenic, ostensibly to kill rats and bedbugs. So I was like, right, like that's a thing. No, it was. Arsenic or mercury compounds were mixed with water, alcohol, or turpentine and applied with a brush, a feather, or an eyedropper to get rid of bedbugs. I'm like, just think, if you've got so many... No, don't think about it. Apparently it did, but it was not very healthy for the...
No, because you're like, I'm going to sleep on this here arsenic and mercury now.
Yep.
Good times.
Yes. There was also evidence that she had convinced a doctor and several of her residents to buy arsenic for her. And around this time, it was also discovered, this was the dumbest mistake ever, that Gilligan's will that cut out his 4 sons was a forgery. Because guess whose handwriting it was written in? Amy's.
Amy.
I'm like, yeah. She was finally arrested, initially charged with 5 murders. Her lawyer got it down to a single count, and she was found guilty of the murder of Franklin Andrews in mid-1917 and sentenced to death. Her lawyers appealed, and the conviction was overturned, and she was granted a new trial in 1919. I cannot find out why. I could not. Now, granted, I didn't spend 6 weeks researching this, but I could not easily find out why it was overturned.
Yeah, sometimes it's just, you're like, oh, what? Or they explain some shit without explaining some other shit, and you're like, but okay, but why?
Yeah.
Okay.
Who knows? But at the second trial, she pled insanity, and her daughter Mary testified that her mother was addicted to morphine. She was found guilty again and sentenced to life in prison. She was transferred to the Connecticut Hospital for the Insane in 1924 and remained there until she died in 1962 at the age of 87. So she lived a long time. In an interesting note, Amy's brother John was recorded as being at that same hospital for the mentally ill in 1902, and one of her sisters was living there in 1930. So I don't know what was happening then in that family, but in response to the trial, I will say, Connecticut's state legislature introduced a bill in 1917 requiring licensing, inspections, and annual death reporting to the State Board of Charities for old folks' homes to prevent similar incidents. A final note, there are a few people who believe that Amy Archer Gilligan may have been innocent. They cite the circumstantial evidence and the fact that she never confessed. Now, we've talked about people before. Some people reach a point and they just snap and confess everything, but there are people who never confess.
Yeah.
They maintain their innocence till the day they die. There's also the point that arsenic was frequently used in the embalming process. So some people said when you dug up these bodies, of course there was arsenic present because it was used in embalming, but I would think it would be distinct from being found in their stomach or digestive tract. Mm-hmm. But I'm not a forensic pathologist, and I've never played one on TV.
Yeah. Well, and if you really wanted to go like full devil's advocate, the house was the first of its kind, taking in elderly people. And it could just be that there was no awareness of how rapidly because now we know that sometimes you put people in nursing home, they will go downhill faster. Mm-hmm. And just depending, right? I don't want to turn people off of it completely, but I did have to do my clinicals in a nursing home, a Medicare facility. But, so people could have degraded faster once they were in there, and there could have been this higher body count because there was nothing to compare it to at the time.
In the average, once someone goes to a nursing home, generally, what was the figure I was given? 9 months, 9 to 18 months, usually. And that's not saying that nursing homes are doing anything wrong.
No, but it's a big change, but also you put them in a nursing home for a reason. Right? So
they're not. Yeah, you're not putting people in there who are in the pinnacle of their health.
It's hard to see what's correlation or what's causation.
Yes.
Yeah.
And some people don't get that correlation is not causation.
Right.
But honest, it's not. So my sources for this were my True Crime a Day calendar. I love that thing. I have stuff from my last calendar I still haven't followed up on. I just have a little folder full of them. Wikipedia, of course, IMDb, and Virginia Stage. I don't know why. They did their website had a big article on it.
Okay.
So
I need to say on something we were talking about earlier, I find it funny how resistant I am to paying $2.99 to rent something on a streaming service that I'm already paying for. Uh-huh. But we lived at Blockbuster.
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah.
I used to rent stuff. We were renting from the box when that box was that Red Box or whatever.
Box.
But I'm all $1.99 to watch this movie I was seeking and isn't playing anywhere else. I'll skip it. I just think that's so funny, this mental set of mine.
And you look at how many. So if I have Netflix and Prime and Hulu. I may have one other. So look at the vast amount of programming that's available on those 3 platforms. And I'm like, no, I want to watch this one specific thing that isn't available. This one.
I think we've paid like 3 times in the entirety of streaming to actually like, all right, we'll pay for this one.
I will do it sometimes because I'm just at the end of, it's been a day or a week or a month or a year. And I just want, and I've got it built up in my head. I want to sit on my couch. I want to have a drink. I'm going to maybe have popcorn or pizza, something. I've got the whole evening mapped out in my head. And I'm like, fuck it. I will pay $15 if that's, I will not. But yeah, $2.99, $3.99. Yes.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to do, it's a collection.
Like I usually do.
It's a collection of realtor murders. Okay. According to an A&E crime blog article by Kaylee White Van Bale, why violence and murder is a real concern for real estate agents. Being a realtor is a dangerous job. Also, I can't help it. I think it's funny because Santa Clarita Diet. Do you remember there's a whole scene arguing about whether it's realtor or realtor?
Oh, yes.
I say realtor. So I was on the side of the not Drew Barrymore people. But anyway, it just sounds better to me.
I love that. I'm going to rewatch that.
Right? It's on my list.
It is hilarious.
I need them to do just like one of those, when they do like a movie later. Psych did it.
Yes.
X-Files did it. Yeah, that's what we need. Cited in that piece are statistics from the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics saying, quote, 23 real estate related professionals died from violence on the job in 2022, end quote. And survey results from the National Association of Realtors saying, quote, 2% of residential real estate agents were victims of a crime while on the job, end quote. That doesn't sound like much, but they're not cops.
True.
They're freaking realtors. So 2% is a lot for that. They had some number of X million, that's 30,000 realtors in a year in the U.S.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
If you think about it, this isn't a surprise, though.
Well,
the job frequently consists of being alone in a home with a complete stranger, sometimes in isolated areas, and about 62% of realtors are female, according to NAR, which is what I'm going to say instead of that whole big long thing from here on out. Not only that, but it appears many people view realtors as rich, it turns out, which we can probably credit to shows like Selling Sunset.
oh, yeah.
And yes, there are people who sell higher income houses like Selling Sunset, but the bulk of them are not rich. We became like family friends with the realtor who helped us get our house when we first moved to Colorado when I was a kid. And she helped us get our first house when I got married and everything in our second house. Like, she's not rich. She's still living in the same house she was when I was a kid.
Oh, wow.
Yep. With the stats out of the way, I'm going to cover some realtor-related murders, including a serial killer who was a realtor, just to mix it up and ensure home sellers and seekers both get a healthy dose of fear when they're doing this.
I want to make everyone afraid.
I like to spread the fear around. Like peanut butter.
Bravo. We are equal opportunity frighteners.
That's right. What actually sent me down this particular rabbit hole was researching the Black Dahlia, which I'll be covering in a future episode. I found a list of murders that happened around the same time as her brutal murder that police thought could possibly be related, and one of those was a real estate agent in Los Angeles. Gladys Eugenia Kern was 42 when she was found dead in a house she'd been showing. It was February 14th, 1948, and she'd been stabbed in the back and left in the vacant house. It looked like she'd met up with the man at a drugstore because people recalled having seen him, but they couldn't identify him. There wasn't enough information. They hadn't paid that much attention. And he'd stolen her little book of clients, which I found interesting. I was like, I want to follow that up. Like, did any of the clients get killed? I couldn't find if her killer was ever caught, but did find a small article about police going to Texas to hunt down a piano player who'd been hanging around the real estate office. While it indicated some newspapers had said he might also be the same person who killed the Black Dahlia, this particular article quoted the police as saying they were completely different cases and not related in any way, and there is no similarity except it was a woman. Her memorial on Find a Grave didn't mention the person being caught, only that police were hot on his trail in Texas. I found like these little articles and then it all got overshadowed by Black Dahlia.
Right.
Side note, her grave is in part of Forest Lawn Memorial Park called Resurrection Hill. Doesn't that seem like weird? You're at the funeral. I specifically want my relative on Resurrection Hill. Is there a secret I need to know here? It seems so wrong. In McKinney, Texas, on July 8th, 2006, a couple arrived at a model home to check it out. But when they stepped inside the model, there was no one at the front desk. Instead, there was a pool of blood on the floor by the desk, which was in the living room at the front of the house. A blood trail led into the kitchen, where they found Sarah Walker, the realtor covered in blood. They quickly called police and skedaddled.
Yeah.
Police found signs of a struggle, both in the house and on Sarah's person. A plant stand was lying on its side, the plant dumped on the ground. The desk and chair were out of place. Sarah's shoes were there on the floor, as well as her hair clip and an earring, both of which had been busted. Her body was in much worse shape, though. Oh. She'd been beaten in the head and face with the plant stand, resulting in broken teeth and a broken nose.
Oh, my God.
She had been stabbed 33 times and showed signs of strangulation, plus there was a bite mark on the back of her neck. But Sarah had also fought back. There was blood under her nails, and forensics found 2 types of blood in the living room and kitchen, including on the door handle and the window blind cord, which tells me the blinds got closed, the door got locked.
Good for her for fighting back.
Yeah. There were also traces of blood in the kitchen sink where the killer had apparently tried to wash the blood off. Of course. How often does that happen? It was discovered that she was missing her Rolex and a ring, both of which were visible in a security video taken at a bank where she'd stopped not long before the murder. Imagine killing somebody that violently for a Rolex.
No.
And a ring. A cousin of hers reported that they had talked on the phone from about 12:30 to 12:45 until someone walked in to view the house. And Sarah said, "Oh, there's somebody here. I gotta go."
Yeah.
Yeah, it was him. It was about 1:10 when the couple found her. So the murder was so fast and brutal, and he was gone when they got there. That was 20 minutes.
That's insane.
Imagine that, like this mighty battle, and it was 20 minutes. Well, or we don't know when he left.
Yeah.
Sarah was recently divorced, but not only did he have an alibi, his blood didn't match that at the crime scene. Police also questioned everyone she'd met on a dating site called millionairematch.com. There were no leads on her murder until the husband of a different realtor came forward with information on a strange man who had contacted his wife. The day of the murder, a man had called Mamie Sharpless and told her he wanted to look at a property in that same subdivision. He said his name was Chan Lee and that he was staying in room 245 of a nearby hotel. They set a time to meet, but when she asked him for a phone number, he said he was calling from a phone booth, then hung up on her. She tried calling both hotels with the name he'd mentioned, but there was no room 245 in one of them, and no one was staying in that room at the other one. Wary, Mamie took her husband with her, and they waited in the car to see if he would even show. Sure enough, an Asian man showed up in a white Mustang, but when asked if he was Chan Lee, he refused to make eye contact, said no, and drove away. So they shrugged it off, went about their setup in the townhome that was for sale since another client was due to come around as well. When the husband looked outside later, he saw Sarah arrive and go into the model home, and he noticed the white Mustang parked in front of it. When they left after their showing, the Mustang was still there. Though it was weeks later that they put this together and contacted police, they were able to put together a police sketch using hypnosis and have the news release it. Immediately, another female realtor called in to report she'd had some strange experiences with a man who looked similar to him. She'd previously shown him some houses with no sale resulting from the showings, but then he'd shown up at her house out of the blue months later, tracked her down, claimed his car had broken down in her driveway, and asked to use her phone. She didn't let him in, which resulted in him pounding on her door in a rage and refusing to leave, and she had to call the police. He left before the police got there. That man was Kosal Chantakomani. Chantakomani? But we're leaving that. And he owned a white Mustang. And this is where I regret my decision to always use the first name of the victims and the last name of the perpetrator.
Yes.
So Chantakomani had a violent history with time in juvie for assaulting classmates and the kidnapping of 2 women at gunpoint, which he'd just gotten out of prison for 6 months before Sarah's murder. He changed his story multiple times when police spoke with him, claiming he went into the model home, called for someone, but they never showed up. It was the whole thing, like Harry's Corny said, "I know nobody was there because I said, hello, hello, is anyone there?" I was like, okay, bud. And washed his hands in the sink. He had freshly healed cuts on his hands, and they were able to match both his DNA and his bite marks to forensic evidence left behind. He was put to death August 17th, 2022, though Sarah's family was actually against the death penalty for religious reasons, and it had previously been delayed due to bite mark matching and hypnosis being used on a witness being shown to be junk science. So at the time, they had started seeing, okay, it's problematic to do bite marks. The forensic community was understanding that you could not 100% guarantee you were correctly matching them, etc.
Unless you had some weird fucking bite pattern.
Yeah. The findings stood due to the DNA evidence.
Right.
So he was 41 at the time of his death. So he was just way into being a fucking thug early on. Short life for that. On April 8th, 2011, in West Des Moines, Iowa, during an open house in a model townhome, a man walked in and shot Ashley Auckland twice and immediately took off. Her case has never been solved, as she hadn't expressed being under threat or being afraid of anyone, and no one saw the shooter. Ashley was known for volunteering in various organizations that supported children, such as Big Brothers and Big Sisters, and a playground for all children, including those with cognitive and physical disabilities, was built and named after her. In the latest news this year, a new cold crime unit has started looking into the crime in hopes of finally discovering her killer. On September 25th, 2014, 50-year-old Beverly Carter went to an appointment to show a home in a rural area to a couple, but when she hadn't returned home hours later after the evening showing and wasn't answering calls or texts, her husband grew concerned. When he drove out to the address, which she had left him on a phone call, which is smart, he found her vehicle locked, purse inside, and the front door of the home open, but empty. 5 days later, her body was found in a shallow grave at a concrete plant. Her husband had received a call demanding a ransom of $100,000 along with the demand not to contact police, but things had gone awry and she had been suffocated by wrapping electrical tape around her head. A man named Aaron Lewis soon emerged as the main culprit after a car accident he was in, though police never said how they knew it was him or how that connected him. He had been previously employed at the concrete plant where she was found. Eventually, they discovered his wife had been in on it as well. The two had become estranged since the murder, and while Lewis claimed to be innocent at first, then changed it to them having been in a threesome when Beverly died accidentally during it, his wife confessed to everything. The defense went hard at Beverly's husband, still pushing the affair angle, but in the end, both Lewis and his wife were found guilty. It was later revealed that Beverly had been raped, according to one of the sources, which may be why he used the threesome excuse. It likely didn't help that Lewis fired his lawyer and insisted on representing himself. She got 30 years, and he got life without parole twice over. Beverly was a grandmother of 5, and her son had created the Beverly Carter Foundation with the intent of protecting realtors. In addition, Arkansas passed a law requiring realtors to take a safety course every year to stay licensed, and it has since been enacted in other states. While there are more cases, including a Canadian realtor who disappeared the same way Beverly did, though her case is still unsolved, as well as a male realtor who was killed, which is fairly unusual, it's time to look at the realtor who wasn't at risk himself because he was the risk. On August 31st, 2016, in South Carolina, a couple disappeared. 30-year-old Kayla Brown and 32-year-old Charles David Carver had been hired by a realtor named Todd Kolep to clear brush on one of his properties. Someone started posting on her Facebook page saying they were safe and had just taken off on their own. Somebody was on his Facebook page as well, same sort of thing. Yep. But her dog was found in her apartment without food and water, and her mom said she never would have left that dog behind. And the dog was fine. So people know. They didn't find a dead dog.
That's always the question.
Police were able to track down the last known location of the cell phone signals, because the doofus was using it. This led them to a large metal storage container on the property where they heard banging noises. Inside, Kayla was chained to the container.
Oh my God.
Kolhap had been raping her, had her for 20 days, and had killed Charles days before, supposedly due to make her... He got mad at her, and so, as revenge, he killed her boyfriend or partner.
Oh my God.
Police searched the large isolated property and found 2 more bodies, those of Megan Lee McCraw Coxey and her husband, 29-year-old Johnny Joe Coxey. Megan had been killed on December 25th or 26th by gunshot, and her husband had been killed about a week before that, also by gun. It was believed they'd been hired to come clear brush from his property, just as he'd done with Kayla and Charles, and he'd actually met her at a Waffle House where she was a server. The cook and other servers remembered him as he'd frequented the restaurant and freaked out the servers by being weird and inappropriate with them. It had reached the point where the cook would take his orders so the women wouldn't have to interact with him.
Wow.
Unfortunately, Megan didn't follow her gut, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they clearly needed the money, and so they must have spoken at some point, and he offered, hey, I can pay you if you guys come out and do this. But Kohlhepp didn't just confess to these crimes. He took responsibility for a mass shooting on November 6, 2003, which had become a cold case by this time. Like, this dude tried everything. Someone had entered Superbike Motorsports and killed the owner, 30-year-old Scott Ponder, the service manager, 29-year-old Brian Lucas, the mechanic, 26-year-old Chris Sherbert, and the bookkeeper and owner's mom, 52-year-old Beverly Guy.
Wow.
A look into his past showed he had been in prison previously for the kidnapping of a 14-year-old girl when he was 15. Christy Granado had been kidnapped at gunpoint, tied up and raped. Then Kohlhepp had walked her home after threatening to kill her entire family if she turned him in. Luckily, she did it anyway, though the prison term was too short to save as adult victims. I figure probably some teenagers were saved by him being in prison for a while. He was found to have borderline personality disorder, and his own father described him as having only two emotions, anger and madness. He had a high IQ and had built great success when he opened his own real estate firm. He'd even won awards. On the flip side, he was known for being aggressive and inappropriate with some female clients and staffers, and for watching porn while at work. As a child, he'd been put into counseling early for behavior problems and violence toward animals. There were some issues because his parents were divorced, and his stepdad, they had a weird, awful something. He has claimed he has other victims, but nothing solid has been found. Kayla was under the impression that there were 2 more bodies buried on the property where she was found, but searches were eventually called off. It was 95 acres.
Oh my God.
Treed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Finally, both sides of this can be tied together in one crazy case. Technically, 2. On September 28th, 1998, Rosalba Martinez Contreras murdered 79-year-old Valentin Partida by bashing him with a hammer, then setting fire to the house. The fire is what ultimately killed him, and attacking his 91-year-old bedridden wife, Elvira, with a razor, though she survived briefly, only to die 6 months later from the effects of smoke inhalation.
Oh, good God.
Valentin had confronted Rosalba for not only scamming him out of a significant amount of property years before, when she had convinced him to sell off various deeds at below market prices, which they had then turned around and sold at the proper prices, sending kickbacks to Rosalba, but also for having drained a dual account they had for investments, because he'd been talked into that as well. Rosalba was a broker, not a realtor, as far as I could tell, but her brother, Ricardo Contreras, was a realtor and notary who had helped her defraud the couple, and years later, in 2017, he was found murdered by knife on a property he'd been showing to a prospective client.
Huh.
Couldn't have happened to nicer.
No.
Fascinatingly, the only way I was able to find a picture of her was because she was in, there was a thing to sign, whatever the website is, where you can get people to sign petitions.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was change.org. And they were trying to get female prisoners who had health issues, better services and leniency and stuff like that. She was trying to get, even though she had no chance of getting out, right?
Right.
There was no parole. She was trying to get leniency to get out because she had cancer, and it was denied, and that was 2022, and I couldn't find anything else on her. Again, couldn't happen to a nice person. However, when she went into prison, she was pregnant.
Oh.
And it was with twins, I guess, and she lost one, but she successfully delivered the other, and I didn't see who took possession, who adopted the child or whatever. And interestingly, on that change.org petition, somebody who had the same last name, so a family member, went off about how she was innocent, and it was actually the Partida's sons who wanted the money, and they had done this and set her up to look like she was getting. I'm like, yeah, but did they scam the money for her too? And it was bullshit, but it was this tirade on there about how she was completely innocent and had been blamed. So, sources: LA Times, Los Feliz Improvement Association. That one's funny because It was for the realtor that got killed around the Black Dahlia time, and it was in the Los Feliz development. And they have on this page then, hey, somebody was killed here. And I'm like, I bet like the realtors love you.
Yeah.
Find a Grave, Death Penalty Information System, Texas True Crime blog post by Maya Beeson, Des Moines Register, KCC 18 News, Arkansas Online, Carc.com, Wikipedia, NBC News, Daily Mail, Greenville News, Whittier Daily News, LA Times Homicide Report, Psychology Today, Realtor Magazine, and the A&E True Crime blog. And the Daily Mail, by the way, was just for photos. That's where I actually was able to find photos of the victims when I couldn't find them anywhere else.
It is amazing what you can learn on Find a Grave. I mean, sometimes it has nothing.
It is, because that
has
one,
just the picture.
that was for the Coxies, is that I was able to find his Find a Grave, and it detailed some of the information about his murder, and where I was able to get pictures of them.
Find a Grave is how we found out my grandmother had a half-sister.
Oh.
Because I was on the phone with my sister, and we were looking at Find a Grave. I can't remember why. So we were looking up something about our grandparents. I don't know. And it maybe we had just discovered the website, and we were looking up, we have a lot of dead family members. So, and I was reading, but you have to read down in the details when it says other relatives or, parents and children, and it lists. And I went, did you know Grandma had a sister? And my sister's like, no, she didn't. Well, this says she did. And that's how we found out my great-grandfather came to the U.S. twice. He had married and had a child. The first time he's here, got divorced, went back to England, got married again, came back again.
Wow.
Yep.
See, I do not have anybody that was even that recently an immigrant in my family. Not even on the white side. So I'm always struck by that, because the tracing is way, way back. Too many generations for me to be like, hey, could I be a citizen here? Unfortunately.
Yeah. So yes, you never know. But sometimes I'll go to Find a Grave thinking, ooh, I'll look up and see and it'll just be like, have a picture of the gravestone. And
right. I think it was the first realtor from around the Black Dahlia time. I went to Find a Grave for two different people, right? But that was the one where I was able to find like her picture and stuff like that, because it just wasn't one woman being killed. It just wasn't news.
No.
And again, the only reason I probably found those follow-up articles is because they were like, could he have killed the Black Dahlia too? No, probably not.
No, but thanks for playing.
Huge difference in MO there, but alrighty. There were no similar MOs around her death.
I hate the ones that, like you said, the realtor who was shot twice and it's still open because you don't know why she was killed. You don't know who killed her, but you also don't know why.
Right. There's just nothing. Like, she wasn't robbed. Nothing was taken from her. And the problem is they're just alone in these houses. Mm-hmm. And there's an open house advertised all over the place because this is their income. So they're putting this in. It has been shown that criminals have realized that, hey, this is a great target. Mm-hmm. And so they know to look for. They will actively seek out open houses and that sort of thing because they know that there's going to be often a single woman in that house by herself, and that there are going to be huge gaps of time where there's nobody else there. So it is a specific target, much like seeking out sex workers, because they're easy targets. And I will say that NAR, go to their website, because they have a lot of tips and training on how to stay safe and what you should do as a realtor. Like, for example, make sure that client precedes you.
Oh.
Don't ever turn your back on the client. Keep X amount of distance at any given time. That sort of thing.
Another good thought.
Yes. So they have a lot of rules. Make sure you get their information ahead of time. Meet them at the office and then go to the site in your own car. Like when we went house hunting with our realtor, and again, she'd known us forever.
Right.
But she just drove us around. So she was completely isolated in that way. Anything could happen at any point somewhere. Somebody could pull a gun and say, now pull over up here.
I have a friend who's a realtor who I'm now going to ask about this. And I'm saying, hey, did you know?
Yeah, there was a lot of frustration, like looking through the articles with people like, when are they going to try and protect their people? Because it is a solitary job. You don't have a partner, usually. In Santa Clarita Diet, I guess you do. But you usually don't have a partner.
Right.
And so you're just completely alone. You have to follow these safety things. You need to get their information ahead of time. My whole thing on that is great, but they can give you false information. Now,
True.
are you taking their license and like, all right, let me see your license and let me write down your information here? That would be better.
And it would be wonderful if you could find someone to go with you and just be in the house with you. But people have lives.
Right. They have their own jobs.
Yes, they are always available. I mean, I know open houses are generally on weekends, aren't they? So...
yeah, I think they usually are.
So, but yeah, people have lives. They can't always drop everything and just go hang out with you in a house for 3 hours or however long.
Right. And there's some sort of app or something, because all I know is I saw somebody in the comments on something say, well, get such and such app, and I don't remember what it was, and have yourself dialed into it and have your finger on there so if anything happens. And I'm like, what is this app? Now I don't know where it was. But there's lots of things like that. So, but they are trying to get those tips out. And like with that one, the state, you have to go through training every single year, safety training. And that's big sense. that happens places. Because why not?
Yeah.
Like, why wouldn't you want to do that?
No.
At the same time, if you're like a woman looking for a house alone.
Yes.
You could also fall victim. I'm like, no, that's complicated. Because my thing there would be, I'm also not going to turn my back to you. So I don't want to go in front of you.
Yep.
So what, are we going to have a weird little juggle when we're entering the house?
After you. No, after you.
That's right. No. So that's where it gets tricky because you also have to protect yourself. You never know if that realtor is going to target you somehow, because how convenient. Again, if they're not having you fill something out ahead of time, you've just disappeared. Mm-hmm. Most of the time, people who are looking at houses aren't sending the addresses they're looking at to anybody ahead of time. So if something happened to you, it's easy for the realtor to say, yeah, we looked at such and such, and then that was it. If you're smart, you send a follow-up text to them.
Oh. You have a devious mind.
I do. Like, it's really easy to cover that up. You're welcome, realtors who want to murder people.
I remember a long, long time ago going with a friend who's wanting to buy a house or a condo or something. And he said... I was like, what are you doing this weekend? I'm going to go look at a couple of houses. He said, you want to go with me? Sure. I've never looked at houses. Great. And you know me, I'm a rather enthusiastic sort. Everything is an adventure. So he would be the one talking to the realtor. He would be he would say, he always said I, he never said we, but it never failed when we got to the kitchen, they would start talking to me. Or when we got like to the bedroom and we're looking at the closets, they would turn and start addressing questions to me. And I was like, I'm not going to live here. I would just say that very bluntly. It's his house. I'm just along for shits and giggles. I'm just here because this is fun.
I like house hunting when it's not going to cost me money.
Yeah. That's
why there's a parade of homes.
I had never been house hunting, so I thought it was fun. You see these new places and they smell good because they smell new. And I was like, yeah, no, I don't. I was like, yeah, it looks like a great closet. I'm not going to live here, though. And they always looked very confused. And then they'd look at him and he'd be like, yeah, she's not.
Just here to accompany me.
I'm the emotional support person. We didn't know that term back then, but that's what I was.
That's right.
I can perform that role.
I mean, there have been times where I've been like, I could be a realtor. I like going to all the different houses. I would like to make bank every time I sell a house. But
you have to deal with people.
Well, yes. But that wouldn't even be the worst fit. But also, my concern, I don't have to be concerned that somebody would be in my space because I don't let people in my space anyway. Why is that? Why are you approaching me this closely? Step away.
You would have a taser.
Well, and that's the other thing. Like, as a realtor, carry around your keys with something on them. Mm-hmm. Have you some bear spray. Do something, whatever you need to do. But if they're offended that you have to have a safety thing nearby, then I don't think that they meant well.
I'm thinking any aerosol sprayed into someone's face would slow them down.
It's if you're a Texas realtor, you already have the big hair. Just carry your hairspray around with you. I will say it's fascinating how the older female realtors that I covered, like how similar in appearance they were.
Really?
Yes. And I purposely chose different states for each one and like a different kind of attack in each one. Because believe me, I could have done like the same thing over and over and over again, right? Including just being shot. It's crazy, but no. But I look at the pictures and I'm like, you look exactly like I would picture.
A realtor?
An older realtor. The younger ones had their own look.
Huh.
They all kind of wear the same kind of suits and stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. But it was just fascinating. If they were all blonde. I'm not kidding. Yeah, just in these examples. Now, the man that I would have covered if I hadn't been like, this one's too similar to other ones. But like he was brunette. So he was right on the outside. But like blonde, big hair, the fancy dress. And those ones, Beverly and Sarah, I want to say, yes, were both the older two realtors. And they both had fancy cars that they were kind of advertising that they were doing pretty well as realtors and ended up getting targeted. And they're like, one of the tips to realtors was, don't wear fancy jewelry.
Yeah.
Take it off beforehand because otherwise you're right there flashing your bling around. And again, people assume you're rich. If you look rich on top of being assumed rich.
Yeah.
If I show up in my crusty old truck, nobody thinks I'm rich.
No. I was astonished when we started house hunting and you start looking at realtor ads and I'm like, there's no other, is there another profession where people post their photo to get your business?
Writer. You have to have a whole platform, a website and headshots.
Well, true. But but people don't, I shouldn't say that.
Podcaster.
But I mean, people don't look through our pictures and say, I'm going to listen to this podcast because that Shannon's pretty cute.
They might.
But I don't think that's how people generally pick their podcasters.
Here's the thing. I remember way back when, and it was the year John Hart, I want to say, was at conference, and somebody who was teaching there was like, FYI, some people do buy books based on your appearance. Especially not for men, but for women.
Really?
If there's like an unattractive woman on the book cover, they might not pick up the book. And I don't remember who that was or what that was in conjunction with, but it was one of those things that stuck in my head because I was like, how very dare they? Like what?
I'm halfway through a book oftentimes before I even realize who wrote this. And
I'll do that. Like at some point, something will happen in the book and I'm like, what is the brain that thought of this? And then I'll go look.
Yes.
And that's the only reason. And not even all books have pictures on them.
The only one, yes. And one of the ones I remember looking at was, what's his name? Joe Hill. Because he was Stephen King's son and they do favor.
They very much.
Yeah. So that was why I looked at his picture, but that's because I knew who he was. But I don't care.
Yeah.
But I guess some people do.
King's genetics are very strong because Owen also looks a lot like him.
Yes.
I don't remember the daughter maybe looks more like Tabitha. I don't remember, but I don't hear about her much because I think she's like a minister.
Yeah, she's some kind of pastor.
Yeah, she's not a writer, so of course I'm not going to hear about her as much.
Yeah.
But I also couldn't name Tabitha King on site because I am not a Tabitha King reader.
I read her first book.
Oh, okay.
That's all I can tell you.
What genre does she write?
I can't even, I don't know. I remember she wrote a book and I was like, I must read it. And I didn't dislike it. I didn't love it. It landed somewhere in the middle for me. But you know what I just read? I just finished this morning.
What?
The Thursday Murder Club.
Oh, okay.
Have you heard of it?
I think so.
It's set in a British retirement community. And they start examining cold cases. Well, then somebody gets killed on the property and it's really good because I love that we are getting more retired people as main characters in books. But there are some people who are so trope heavy that you have all these characters, all they think about is what hurts. Now, everybody's got shit that hurts. I mean, we all do. I mean, some people who are even not retired have things that hurt.
Yes.
But there are some that just go on and on and on, and that's almost how they differentiate their characters. Well, this one has bad knees, and this one has bad hips, and this one uses a walker, and this one's getting. But I really felt like in the Thursday Murder Club, they were very well-rounded characters, and it did not focus. Now, they were all obviously knew they were not in their prime. Mm-hmm. You know, they knew they weren't skipping around like a 20-year-old, but I just...
Yeah, but it can tweak here and there, but it shouldn't be the central part of the character. I was trying to remember, because Mike Beffler was the first person I saw really do like a retirement home.
Yes. Retirement can be murder.
Yes. And I think I remember enjoying it. I just
his was pretty good. It was...
So I think he balanced that better.
He did. And some of the ones I've read, that's not why I pick them up, because it's set in a retirement community, but, you know me. You put a book in my hands, I'm going to read it. Right. Well, let me roll that back. Not everyone gets to put a book in my hand and I'll read it. It's actually a fairly short list, but yeah.
Yeah, I'll read pretty much most anything. Admittedly, romance isn't my biggest thing, but I still will read a romance here and there, usually to support a friend. Yeah. But
when we were at Pikes Peak Writers Conference, I was talking to a woman. She was talking to me about her pitch, and I said, "Have you read? Are you sure this isn't Christian fiction?" Which is not a genre I read a lot of, but occasionally something falls into my hand, and usually the story intrigues me, and I read it, and then I get to the end, and I read the notes and go,
well, then that's a good story, because if I'm being beat around the head with it, then I'm going to be done with that.
Or I get halfway through it and go, this is the dumbest piece of... But anyway, and the woman said, "Oh no, this isn't Christian fiction." And I said, "If you don't mind me asking, why not?" And she goes, "They use bad words. They use, they say crap." And I was like, "Wait, you mean they say crap like bad words? Or you mean they use the word crap?" And she goes, "No, they say the word crap." And I was like, and people have affairs. And...
Oh yeah, Christians don't do that.
And I said to her, I would challenge you to go to the bookstore or your local library. I said, I would never tell anybody they got to buy anything. I said, but I think you should read some of the Christian fiction that's being currently published, because I said, I think you're going to find some of it deals with very real world problems. And I said, I think that's where this book might belong.
Yeah. No, and from what you said before, it totally does belong there, but she's going to have to come around to that. What she's going to do is she's going to pitch, query, whatever, and people are going to keep saying, I don't do Christian fiction. And then she's going to have to learn that the hard way. I mean, that happens in all different genres. So, no, it's this. Like, I totally pitched mine as, I knew that urban fantasy wasn't being picked up by agents, even though it technically sells for...
Yes.
Self-pub people, but so I was like, what was it? It was whatever, current fantasy or whatever, but it's not. That's not the right word. But I was like, here we go, and then I got back. I don't have the connections to sell an urban fantasy. I was like, yeah, contemporary fantasy. That's what I put in there. At the same time, it's not set in a city, and so that defies the definite. But whatever, because it's been lumped in there, even though it doesn't match the definition.
Yes.
But, I remember my first round of authors, the keynote type person, guest of honor, he published Christian fiction. He was a huge seller. I wonder if she thinks it's going to limit her, but it doesn't. There's entire Christian bookstores.
Was he from that series?
Yes. It was like an apocalyptic
Left
kind of...
Behind?
Yeah. I think it was him.
There were two guys. It was two friends who wrote that series. I believe
he was a Colorado one.
Yeah. They might have both been Colorado, but one I know did a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah. So he was speaking out there.
Again, I came up after those books got really popular. Somebody I knew had it, and it said I could borrow it. So I started reading it, and then I took it back. I don't think I finished it because I said, the people who don't believe... I said, there's a lot of prejudice in this book against people who aren't religious. I said, not everyone who's an atheist is a slavering demon murderer. I was just like, I can't. That's not, no.
Yeah.
I said it's 2.
You're going to isolate readers that aren't Christian anyway.
Yep.
You might as well put this in Christian fiction, so at least it's known. And that's not going to eliminate everybody who's non-Christian from reading it, but at least they know what they're getting into.
Yes. And I heard also at conference that a lot of people were pitching fantasy to a particular, and I can't remember if she was an agent or an editor, but apparently she was up to her eyeballs with dragons. And people were like, she said she couldn't take dragons or she wouldn't deal with and I'm like, that's fair. She's allowed to do that. Now I hope she was kind.
Here's my thing. I did hear from one person that he was very mad. He said that she didn't give him anything else after she said, I don't do dragons or something. And that was before I pitched to her, right? Because she takes horror. And, but she was incredibly nice to me. And after saying, because she said, oh my God, I would absolutely read this and love this, but I don't have the right connections for horror comedy. And so that's totally fair. And I knew going in, it didn't say horror comedy. It's very niche. There's only a few that handle it. But I believe in always pitching if I can.
Yes.
Because it's the experience and because, like happened here, she said, but do you have any questions for me? Let's discuss it.
Yeah.
She said, there's absolutely a market for it. So you need to pitch this. You need to be querying this. But she was like, but do you have questions? And I was like, absolutely. And so I asked her about comparables because that's the thing is she gave me, names. And I asked about certain concerns in the story. And she was like, nope, absolutely not. That's under that. Because, I mean, there's animals involved and they're going to get killed because they're killing people.
Yes.
And I was like, is that a problem? Is that something that's going to keep up? And she was like, no, that's the nature of it. It's a creature horror. So no, absolutely not. So like she sat there and talked to me until we got the time called and just let me shoot questions at her and have a conversation with her.
So I have to wonder if
he shut down.
If he shut down or if he was like trying to convince her why she should be wanting dragons. And it's like, it's just like for a while you couldn't sell vampires because the market was saturated or the agents were just fucking tired of them.
Well, yeah. I mean, the market gets saturated. Yeah. You got to move around it. That's urban fantasy as well.
Shapeshifter romance.
Yeah.
Which is not my genre, but...
But yeah, so I have to wonder because I feel like she was really good to me. She couldn't see that I was fellow faculty. We ended up, by the way, hosting a table together after that.
Oh, nice.
Which, yes. So if you're faculty at this, if you're teaching workshops or you're an agent or an editor or whatever... then you host tables. So there's a sign with your name on it. And you're kind of supposed to host. You're supposed to sit there and keep people engaged at the table and whatever. So, yeah, that was, I was like, I'm not going to let this be awkward. So I walked up and I was like, hello again. And then we just chatted. Had some interesting, there was somebody at the table who kept trying to sell her on something. And what's bad is one of the staff who was also at that table set that up and then encouraged him and didn't stop him when he kept pushing it after she said that she doesn't like that type of, it was a vampire thing. And she was like, no, I only do vampires if there's something completely new and creative about it. And he's pushing this classic and he just kept going. And he was encouraged by the staff member and that was bad. But,
off the air, you'll have to tell me who that was.
So, because I mean, as the host, it's not my job either. I was just a fellow faculty with her. It was the staff member's job to do it. And I ended up having to steer her away. And I just started a different conversation with her on the side. And she was relieved. And that person had to kind of taper off, right? But it's like, this is inappropriate. She has told you she's not interested in this and you're pushing now.
Yeah.
And that is not a thing you do. And if you do that, why do you think that person would want to meet with you when you're not honoring their boundaries they gave you very politely?
Very clearly and politely.
So here, authors is a thing you don't do.
Yeah. I told you about, and I'm not going to name them, but it was a person I talked to quite a bit on Friday. Then I went back Saturday morning. Saw him first thing Saturday morning, started talking to him. And at the end of our conversation, he was like, well, it was nice to talk to you. My name is so-and-so, by the way. And he held up his name card and I held up mine and I said, yes, so-and-so, I know we worked together yesterday. And he looked at me and said, he looked at me blankly for a moment. And then he goes, you know what it is? You're wearing earrings today. And I don't think you were wearing earrings yesterday. That's why I didn't recognize you. I am not kidding. That is what he said.
That's funny. You know what, though? I just read a whole thing about face blindness.
if he had said, I have face blindness, I would have had another conversation with him.
Right?
That's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
But he didn't say that.
No, I know. But I'm just like, that's one of the things they said is that they'll zoom in on something else instead, right? Okay. So like aside, and I literally just read about it last night because it's common in autism.
Well, I looked at him and I was like, because you know me, when I go to conference, I carefully select my outfit. I'm very coordinated. I have jewelry on. I mean, I don't have earrings on today, but I just was like,
okie doke.
Because when I first started working with this person, he turned to me and said, we were doing a task, and he turns to me and he goes, are you a Capricorn by any chance? And I looked at him. I am. I said, as it so happens, I am. Why? He goes, my wife is a Capricorn. Capricorns just know how to get shit done. He goes, you know how to be in charge and you know how to make sure everything happens the way it's supposed to. So feel free to boss me around. I'm like, well, you could go get me a drink. No, I just didn't know what to, okay.
Well, you know that there's like somebody in the local Denver, right? Mm-hmm. That just cannot remember me for the life of him ever, no matter how many times.
Oh, I thought you were going to say her, but.
Well, her too. But no, I am specifically on a panel with him at Mesa Verde Literary Conference.
Oh,
like, literary festival. So I'm like, yeah.
Interesting.
Just completely prepared for him to be on You Are?
I should give him a fake name.
I could give him a different name every time.
Yes.
Then I know if he was faking because he'd be like, I thought you were this person.
I'm Lola Falana.
Did you think I was that person? I'm going to do like the psych thing and just make up a ridiculous name every single time.
Yeah, like Burton Guster.
Yes, I watched a whole video and it was just Sean introducing Gus.
I love those. I love those so much. And because sometimes his reaction, the other actors.
Sometimes he just is on it and he feeds into it. Sometimes he's like, how dare you?
Yes. Dule Hill is just like,
his facial expression.
It's like, what did you do? It's like he can't believe his ears.
The whole reason I started rewatching it is because I finally got my Reels and my, whatever the Instagram version is, trained for the algorithms to show me positive things and not political things because I don't want to hear it. And one of the videos that played was a collection of Gus and Sean screaming.
Yes, you shared that.
Oh my gosh, so funny. Because that's my thing. I've rewatched the Sorority House one over and over, where not only are they screaming, but they are screaming out of the house, and the women are still in there, and they're just a teacup for one of them was sitting, and then they're screaming and jumping up and down, flapping, trying to get into the car, and Gus is trying to unlock it, and then they calm down enough to realize that the window is open.
Well, the funniest, possibly the funniest thing ever on X-Files is the one where David Duchovny screams like a little girl. They put that on one of the ads, one of the little reels, and every time I saw it, I laughed.
Yeah.
Didn't matter. I could have seen it 3 times that day. Every time.
And what's doubly funny is he probably wrote that episode because all the ones that were goofy, he wrote. Or directed and whatever.
Was that the same one where he asks Scully if her little feet can reach the pedals?
Oh my God, I don't know.
Oh my God, that was funny.
My favorite one of my favorite episodes there is the one where Luke Wilson. Mm-hmm. That was the first I'd ever seen Luke Wilson in anything. And then, of course, he was in everything.
It still is.
But he's a small town sheriff. And we're getting 2 different viewpoints. We're getting Mulder's and we're getting Scully's. And Scully, he's like sexy.
Yes.
And Mulder's, he's got huge buck teeth and he has like the dumbest Southern accent one could come up with. And he's an idiot and all that.
I remember that one.
Yeah, that one.
I did like that one. I think, and there were a couple that Charles Nelson Riley was on. Mm-hmm. He was, I can't remember what his role was, but he was on twice playing the same role, playing the same character. And those were good episodes.
I still like the Cops episode where they're acting like they're filming cops. Uh-huh. And so it's like that, them running around and like, oh, we heard this. And then running. But everybody's describing a different monster.
Ah.
Because it, like, looks different to you. Maybe it's your fears or something. I don't remember. But I like that whole thing.
Nice.
It's such a good episode. The number of people whose favorite episode is the Peacock family one is disturbing to me.
Ooh. I know exactly the episode, and I can only say, ew.
That was, like, this is one of the best episodes. And I'm like, you know what? It sure strikes a chord, doesn't it?
It's a deeply disturbing episode.
Yeah. You don't forget it.
No. Ooh.
But anyway, we can sign off now.
I think we can. I think we have entertained.
We could keep talking about all these episodes forever.
We have edutained our listeners long enough.
So our next episode we'll have guest David R. Slayton.
And I'm just going to apologize in advance because I wrote that script and didn't realize what some of the things would sound like when I said them out loud.
Yeah.
It
was filmed live at conference, so
yes.
That was new for us. And we'll see how the editing of that goes.
I don't know what the editing will be like, but it was fun to do. I was a little nervous.
Yeah, it was really fun. But we had a small audience, but because most people petered out and went to bed.
Yeah, because it started at 9.
Yeah, so that's late. A writer's conference day that starts at like, what did it start? 8 that morning?
30? I think 8:30. Classes started at 8:30 on Friday and Saturday, and then 9 on Sunday. Just like that. Can't we just start at noon?
I think that was one thing I liked about StokerCon. I seem to remember it started later. And that the cons usually don't start until like 10 for panels at least, but which for me is still early, but it's way better.
It's better than 8:30.
But then you go to professional writing conferences and they're like 6 a.m., 7 a.m. And I'm like, that is evil and I don't like it.
No.
That's my bedtime. I'm not even kidding. Right now my bedtime is 6 a.m.
I know that it is.
So, yeah. But we didn't even talk about conference on this episode because it's going to be weird because it's next up because the way I'm
well, that's fine.
Interspersing. But yeah, quite an experience.
Yes.
I met a fan.
Excellent.
That was right. That was a fun experience. I was in the bookstore and I was standing up there talking to the people running the bookstore. And then this person came up with a few of my books and was like, do you know if she's signing? And Laura went,
was it Laura or was it me? I said, she's standing right there.
Yeah, you can ask her. She's right there. And she was like, I am such a fan. And I was like, holy shit, that's amazing.
I think I said she would love to sign your
books. Right there.
Shannon.
She sat with me at one of the meals.
Oh,
and
nice.
She came to, she was either at all or at least 2. I don't think she was at the neurodivergent workshop, but
I did hear good things about that one, too.
I got really good feedback on it.
Good.
And that is shocking to me because I didn't get to cover everything because I had way too much material.
Well.
So people bitch about that, though, when you do that normally. I hone.
People will bitch.
But they liked it and they wanted more.
Good.
And I was like, awesome. I will do more.
Yes.
I have the material for it. And I can add in, like, how to take care of yourself at conferences, which I really wanted to have in there. But again, I already knew I had too much shit. And I was like, how fast do I need to talk? But I let people ask questions during.
Yes.
Because I normally do. I almost got derailed in the horror one because somebody asked me a question. I had felt I had already answered it. And then my brain was just like, zzzt. And I'm like, sure, this is the one you're recording.
Yep.
And I was like, well,
I don't know how they... Not that yours shouldn't have been recorded by any means, but I don't know how they chose the ones that were recorded.
Well, and I think I got told last minute it was being recorded, and I feel like it was switched from something. I don't know either. Maybe it was just what the guy was interested in.
I didn't know the details, and I'm good with that.
Right. Because it wasn't our problem.
That was a fucking delight, is what that was.
So much drama behind the scenes, but all right.
All right. So anyway, we will talk to you all next month.
Thanks for listening.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
Find us on Facebook and Instagram or at our website, mysteriesmonstersmayhem.com.
Please like, rate, and review, follow, and share wherever your favorite podcasts are downloaded.
Thank you for listening and supporting our podcast. We'll be back with more shenanigans.